Hi, this is David Orlofsky. Welcome to the Parsha in 5, where in 5 minutes we try to give you a little insight into the Parsha. And Parsha's Vayairah, of course, concludes with the dramatic story of Akedah's Yitzchak, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, take your son, your only son, the son that you love, Yitzchak, and bring him up a mountain and offer him to me as a korban. Avraham understood this quite literally, that he was going to have to shecht his son. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, yeah, I threw in a little wiggle room there because I said bring him up as a korban. I didn't say you have to actually burn him, but Avraham was prepared to do it. So the Rashi tells us the conversation. Kachnos bincha, take your son. Says Avraham, I have 2 sons. Yeah, Yitzchak and Ishmael. Yechidcha, your only son. He says, well, Yitzchak is the only son of Sarah, but Ishmael is the only son of Hagar. Asher ahavta, that you love. I love both of them. Yitzchak. So what was this conversation over here? HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to you and says that I want you to take your only son and bring him as a living korban up on the mountain, and you really don't know who I'm talking about. You don't know whether it's Yitzchak or Ishmael. I said this to somebody once and they said, he was hoping it was Ishmael. I don't think so. Because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said you're going to have a son and that son's going to be called Zarecha, he says, Lu Yichya Yishmael. I hope Yishmael still survives and still lives. So he was very concerned for Yishmael. So what was he thinking at this point? Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says a very interesting shot. Sarah says, this kid is trouble. Send him away. And Abraham didn't want to do it. And Hashem said, listen to Sarah. She knows what she's talking about. And he sent away his son. Now he comes back, obviously, because he's one of the people accompanying Abraham to the Akedah's Yitzchak, him and Eliezer. So at some point he comes back. We know in Parshas Chayesara he does tshuva at the end. So Yishmael seems to be a more complicated character than would appear at first blush. And so what Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says is, Avram Avinu's total intention with sending away Ishmael is because he hoped that the Richuk would accomplish for Ishmael what the Kiruv accomplished for Yitzchak. There was a movement for a while there in parenting called tough love, where if you indulge your children and let them do whatever they want, you're not doing them a favor. And in fact, there's 2 different types of child abuse. There's a type of child abuse where you beat and you verbally abuse and you hurt them in all kinds of ways. And the other one is called neglect. So a parent who tells a kid, you don't have to go to school, you don't have to brush your teeth, you don't have to go to bed, you can eat all the candy you want, I don't care what you do, stay up all night, watch TV, I don't really care. That's just as much child abuse. The social services will take your kid away. That's called neglect. You might think you're a great parent, but you're not. Yeah? If you cared about your kid, then you'd set certain limits for them. And that was the idea of tough love, was to be able to get a kid to understand that your decisions have consequences. And if you're going to do certain things, then you're going to have to face the consequences of those actions. I don't know if Sarah's intention was that when she wanted him sent away. She wanted him sent away because she was afraid of what Yishmael's influence would be on her son Yitzchak. But Avram's intention was that by sending him away, that Richuk, he would appreciate what we're doing here and come back with that level. Ad kedei kach, that when he has obviously reappeared, when Yitzchak is 37 years old, yeah, so that's 35 years later, he had hoped that he had so grown from that experience of the Richuk that he was now ready to be on the same level as a Yitzchak. And that's what he hoped. A parent was telling me once that he had a kid who was seriously messed up by his parenting methods. And he says, I don't know what he wants from me. I treat all my children the same. And I said, you're right. But you understand that, if a mother makes their child, every child for lunch, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it turns out one of the children has a peanut allergy and goes into anaphylactic shock and dies. She says, I don't know what you want from me. I did the same thing for this kid that I did for everybody. Yeah, but people are different. And everybody needs a different approach. It's very tricky when you're a parent, when you have to use several different methods in a house. So that one kid will say, how come he can do that? Or how come she doesn't have to? Because good parents understand Chanoch lenar al pi dako, and every child has to be approached as an individual. This is the challenge that all of us have in life, that you have to look at an individual and figure out the best way. This is what the Bali Musa were experts at, how to look at a person and figure out what approach is going to work best for them. Rabbi Kellerman, Zatzal, who was the Rav of the Youngest of West Hampstead, was a master of this. He knew exactly what to tell each person and on their level, to the point that I remember they always say, as soon as a rabbi comes into town, half the community hates him. That's how it works. Because they would like the last rabbi. It's automatic. And I spoke to one of the Vatikim of West Hampstead when he came. He had been there for a number of years. I said, so is it true that everybody loves Rabbi Kellerman? And she made a sour face and she said, no. No. I would say half the people loves Rabbi Kellerman, the other half only like him a lot. Because he was a master at understanding what to say to each person and how to be able to react to what they needed to hear. And that's what we as parents have to do. And that's what Abraham was hoping he had accomplished with Ishmael, that he had reached the level of a Yitzchak through the Richuk. Good Shabbos.